All right. Gnosticism and Gnostic books. What are those? Well, they started, they think, in the early Christian era, but they actually started long before that. Sectarian groups were writing books to allure adherents long ago. And the knowledge that they were promoting was actually just to control people. Alrighty. So, let's look into that. We're going to look into some of my notes that I wanted to share with you about a question that somebody left in a comment. Actually, it was an email that Phyllis received, and I wrote an answer to this gentleman, and it was written to Ron. Ron, they don't know who you are, so I just wanted to make a video out of this because these are very important questions. There's a lot of people being deceived. They're not reading Scripture anymore. They're looking for secret knowledge and hidden wisdom. You know, the secret manna. They're being tricked. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Pharisees too. Okay, hold on. We're going to shift this around so there'll be a little twist, and then you'll see my notes. Here it comes. Hold on. Gnostic Books. Gnosticism. That means knowledge. The Book of Enoch is always being brought up. What do you think of the Book of Enoch? The Book of Enoch, and what was that source? Well, it wasn't pre-flood, was it? No, it wasn't. It was written actually in Aramaic, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it was a book written by a sect called probably the Pharisees, because it was written in Aramaic, and it was not really sourced actually as being the actual prophet. We're going to talk more about that and explain it. But the Book of Enoch wasn't written by Enoch. It's actually Enoch in the Hebrew. But it was written by a sectarian group, such as the Pharisees, who were really the Prushim. And these were doctrinal controllers who assumed authority over not only teachings, but also over who did the teaching. They approached Yahusha and said, "Who gave you this authority to teach these things?" Well, if only they knew. Yeah, because they were the ones that appointed who was able to be a teacher and who wasn't. It's kind of very similar to the ordination process. Are you ordained? Well, the only ordination that matters, the orders, given orders to teach, is the creator of the universe, the Ruach HaKodesh. That's the source of the real teachings. No one else can do that but him. He's the only one that can bring a man and a woman together. He's the only one that has the authority to make a person man and wife. No one else can stand in between that. You can't make a statement like, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. Oh, really? Okay. Who brings man and wife together? Who teaches through his people? Well, the prophets were men who stood up and they actually spoke the words of Yahuwah himself. Thus says Yahuwah. Well, these doctrinal controllers were only assuming authority over the people that would allow them to take that authority over their minds. Now, these were the Pharisees, and they were also the writers of these books like Yobel, or also known as Jubilees. And that is no older than 35 BCE. Yes, the Pharisees wrote the book of Yobel. They were retelling the account of Bereshith, or Genesis. There are approximately 14 outside writings that are not inspired, because they were not written by men moved by the Ruach HaKodesh. These books contain anachronisms, that is, things that didn't exist at the time, and they're out of time, and many examples of false doctrines cleverly inserted to hold control over those who believe they hold hidden secrets and insights, when all the while the promoters of them are tightening their control over those influenced by them. Gnosticism is very seductive. Some of those writings will tell you stories like the smoke from fish will drive away evil spirits. Really? And that in the afterlife, people who have committed certain types of crimes will be punished by having themselves hung up by their tongues for all eternity. Does that sound like reality or fantasy? Well, that's fantasy. Now, the Apocrypha, that means outside writings, or even better, cryptic writings, outside, way out, far out writings. They're really false writings. And there's about 14 of these books, and some are named in such a way to insinuate that they were written by prophets like Enoch. And the Sibylline oracles, when you start seeing things like that, you're looking at Roman mythology, or the Book of Tobit, and other authors. But they're all composed, now listen carefully, they're all composed after the Babylonian captivity and written in Aramaic by some sectarian group. And some were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, because the things in the caves were written down because the name of Yahuwah was written on the document, a letter or scripture. Anyway, the sectarian groups gave rise to Gnosticism very, very early, and drew adherents who sought after secret knowledge. The book called Jubilees, Yobel, was a retelling of the book of Bereshith, that's Genesis, and was written no earlier than about 35 BCE. The 14 outside writings were not handed down in the true Hebrew script, but rather Aramaic. Again, they were all composed after the Babylonian captivity and written in Aramaic by a sectarian group. The Aramaic script was carried out of Babel. Now I'm talking about the script. Remember, the handwriting on the wall was unreadable because it was real Hebrew, and Daniel knew how to read it. But the Aramaic script was carried out of Babel with the returning Yahudim, with Ezra, Nehemiah, and all the other former captives after the Babylonian captivity. The Aramaic script was adopted by the Assyrians to replace cuneiform around 1000 BCE. And then Babel adopted it around 800 BCE, and we know that in the 600 BCE era, the Yahudim went captive under Nebuchadnezzar, and they came out of that land under Cyrus, or his real name is Koresh, with orders to rebuild the temple and the temple walls and the city of Jerusalem around 522 BCE. And they were bringing with them the Aramaic script, the Assyrian script. Mixing the outside writings among the inspired prophets as if they belonged there would be something no one would dare to do until these modern times. A man named Yusuf ben Matithyahu, also known as Flavius Josephus, by the modern scholars. He wrote about the sectarian books in the latter part of the 1st century CE. And he stated that although many of his day would read these books, the Apocrypha, but they would not dare to presume that they were written by real prophets. The BYNV does not contain the Apocryphal books, but rather only the books written by real prophets. It's a translation, restoring the name of Yahuwah. Yehuda, also known as Jude, addressed the book of Enoch in his letter. This book of Enoch was held dear to some among his assembly, and he cited the parts of their favored book that prescribed the divisive effects it was causing, and continues to do so to this day. There's still divisions over this. And Yehuda also, that's Jude, also quotes a section from another Gnostic favorite, the Apocalypse of Moses, in his short letter. This was another sectarian book written as a story about Adam and Eve, circa 35 CE. Now that was written during his lifetime, probably. In other words, it was something that appeared in the 1st century, this book of Adam and Eve. And also, it has no place among the inspired books. In the Hebrew script, there is no one named Eve. The mother of all the living is the meaning. This was given the name Kua, which is the concordance number H2332, which is first used in Bereshith, or Genesis 3, verse 20. And it's a feminine form of Ki, for life. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next exciting video. Bye now.